Elections are not just about political candidates. Elections should focus on the people, their level of satisfaction with the performance of elected officials, and the role government plays in their lives. Insights on PBS Hawaii brings you an important series focused each week on a conversation led by residents from one of the island communities in our state. What quality of life issues matter the most to them in this upcoming election? Get ready to hear from residents from the island community of Maui. Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of Insights on PBS Hawaii start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Yanji Denise. Tonight is the fifth in our Quality of Life series about what it's like living on each of the islands, what's special and what's challenging. We've heard from residents of Kauai, Hawaii Island, Oahu, and last week Molokai. Tonight we will hear from residents of the Valley Isle of Maui, the second largest of the Hawaiian Islands and the third most populated. It's the largest of Maui County's 4 islands, or Maui Nui, which includes Maui, Molokai, Lanai, and Kaho'olawe, with Wailuku serving as the seat of government for the smaller islands. Tourism dominates the Maui economy, although the island is undergoing significant change as a result of the closing of the sugarcane plantations. Tonight we'll hear from a Maui news director for radio and online news, the co-owner of one of the few mom and pop stores still in business, a taro farmer in East Maui, and an analyst for the county council. We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email, call, or tweet in your questions, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and on the PBS Hawaii Facebook page. Now to our guests. Wendy Osher is the news director for Pacific Media Group on Maui, which owns and operates 6 Maui radio stations and the MauiNow.com website. She's reported news on the Valley Isle for nearly 2 decades. Eric Nakashima is the co-owner with his brother of Pukalani Superette, a family-owned market since 1924, well known for its menu of prepared foods. Mahealani Went was the executive director of the Native Hawaiian Legal Corporation for 32 years before her retirement in 2009. She now lives with her husband on his family's ancestral land in East Maui, where they farm taro. And Saumalu Mata'afa grew up in Lahaina on the west side of Maui, where he still lives today. He's a legislative analyst for the Maui County Council. Welcome all of you. Thank you so much for being here to represent your island and your concerns tonight. Wendy, I want to start with you and we'll go down the line. Tell us why you choose to live on Maui.
Well, I was born and raised in Los Angeles, but we came a lot as children to spend summers on Maui, and I'm part Hawaiian, and I've always loved the cultural identity of that. And so when I graduated from college, that was my first move. I moved in with my grandma for a year and then eventually moved out on my own. But I just love the culture and being so close to my ancestry.
Beautiful. Why do you choose to live there?
I married a man from Maui.
That is a good reason.
But the first time I went to Maui, we were not married, and I did not know him. And when I went to Ke'anai, I felt like I was going home. The landscape was so familiar to me. I was raised in Lauai on the island of Kauai. And the streams, the waterfalls, the lush growth, it's everything that I was familiar with. And so it was like a homecoming. And it's just been a very, it's been an honor and a privilege. And that's why I'm on Maui.
Eric, I know your family has deep roots on Maui as well. Tell us why you've chosen to stay there.
Because I guess obligation to our store business, to our family business, to continue. And my brother also, he feels the same way, I believe. And both grandparents came from Japan, both sides, settled there, and through whatever circumstances, they went through the war times and times of prosperity and had kids, and that's how I got my parents, right? But yeah, I love Maui. I love upcountry. If I would have to move away or something, it would be because maybe curiosity. but I would always come back. You know.
Well, on that point of coming back, I know that you're the youngest of our panelists tonight. You went away for college and you chose to come back. Why did you choose to come home?
Yeah, so I was actually raised in Lahaina for 18 years of my life, and I moved to Florida to go to college, and I lived there for 6 years. And then I also lived on the West Coast for about 2 years too. And I just have very powerful, vivid memories of growing up on Maui, and Maui really is the best place I've ever been in my life. So it's probably where I want to stay for a while.
You know, this whole series is really teeing up the election and talking about some of the issues, the good and the bad, that are facing residents of every island. I wonder, having gone away and chosen to come back as a young person, what do you think is the hardest part of coming home?
Economic diversity definitely is a big issue. I went to school and I got my degree in human factors and systems at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, and you look at job opportunities, and most of those opportunities are on the mainland. Here I had to tailor my skills to be able to live where I want to live and do what I want to do, and it's taken a lot of adapting to live on Maui, but I still think it's worth it.
Eric, I know you're coming from this as a small business owner. What is the biggest challenge for you living on the Valley Isle?
Well, seeing the growth. Sometimes in some years you think the growth is unchecked. And then because of things that are happening in the world, in the state and the mainland, things slow down. Economically, stock markets go down, housing goes down. Prices go down for homes. But you know, it's really sad that these my children or anybody else's children living on Maui will have a hard time affording a house to raise their families on Maui and the next generations, you know? I mean, where does it stop? Of course, progress and all has to happen. We're part of that. We're a part of that process. We progress, we've grown bigger, but we're still a mom and pops. And seeing all the big box stores coming, you know, that's just an indication of progress again, you know. Things have to move along, but to what end? When does it slow down? When does it stop? There are only so much beaches, there are only so many thousands of acres of land, and you know, there'll be a point where it has to stop. Water. Water is a big issue on Maui, and control of water, as maybe the people who live out in the areas with like the taro and stuff, because of EMI and stuff issues. You know, all these things can stop progress.
Right. I mean, what I hear you really saying is that you're feeling squeezed, right, by all of these different forces. I wonder, you know, you've been at the forefront of some of those water fights. As someone in agriculture, how do you feel that squeeze? What is the biggest challenge that you feel?
I think Maui is like all of the other islands, and I mean, for myself as a parent, I'm very, very concerned that our children, if they choose to, have the opportunity to live in their homeland. And it's just very, very sad that, you know, you as, you know, like a young person, you do everything you're supposed to do. You go to school, you go to college, you do your very best, and yet you can't, you know, you may not have hope for affording a home. So I think Maui shares that with the rest of the state. Mm-hmm. Water has been an issue. We just received, East Maui taro farmers just received a landmark decision. It was issued yesterday, and it follows, you know, many, many decades of struggle. And I think that what we need to do as community is figure out a balance. What does that look like? What does that mean? Because the farmers in East Maui have steadfastly said that they wanted to share. Let's figure out a way to share. And it seems like there's a better opportunity today for that. But we can talk about the decision later. But I also want to say that my husband is a taro farmer, not moi. He is the hardest working, and you know, there's such resilience and character, strong character. Not only my husband, but the people from East Maui. They're all really, really super hard workers. So I just want to let them know that it's just a real honor to be here and to be able to live there.
Okay. Well, Wendy, I know you come at this both as a resident of the island, but also as a journalist covering all of the issues, both personally and professionally. What do you feel is the biggest squeeze on Maui? What is the biggest challenge?
Personally, probably the cost of living. We put out a report recently of how it takes someone probably 3 jobs to afford a 2-bedroom apartment. And just my personal experience, I've always had more than 1 job, sometimes 3, and it's just hard to get by for somebody starting out, I think.
And what do you hear from your readers?
And
your listeners, of course, the radio stations as well, we can't forget that.
Yeah, readers, there's a lot of concern about cost of living as well, but also the influx of tourism and how that impacts infrastructure. If there's enough infrastructure to keep up with the pace of tourism. We put out a report recently as well today about how Wailea saw a 56% increase in interest for summer travel, and that's over just 1 year period. So you could see just how every year we're getting more and more tourism and more flights coming to the island, and it's just a matter of if we're able to keep pace with that.
Right, and that is a double-edged sword. Of course, you want the economic development, right, because we want to have the jobs. And there's a graphic that we have that kind of breaks down the sources of jobs. I would like us, if we could go to that, just to talk about where the money is coming from and the kind of economic opportunity that is available on Maui. It's interesting to see, there you have it, where we see, you know, a large number of that, of course, 31% in accommodations, food and beverage, so that is largely reliant on tourism. Then you have government and retail, so you have, you know, over half of the workplace on Maui, basically tourism, food and beverage, government and retail. A lot of those, of course, not exactly high-paying jobs, especially, you know, you look at the professional and business services sector, just 10% of the growth there and of the workplace there. So, Saumalu, I wonder if you could speak to this. Of your peers, how many of your friends and the people that you went to school with, how many of them have chosen to come back, and what are some of the things that you talk about?
Very few, and even my family too. It's hard because we're all really close, and everybody's spread out around the nation and through different countries. And a lot of the reasons why some of my friends don't wish to come back here is because there's just no opportunity for them to do what they really love doing, and it's maybe in fields of psychology, engineering, and it's just really hard to find a job in those fields on Maui.
You know, one of the biggest changes, of course, that is happening to Maui right now is with Alexander and Baldwin and the closing of the last sugar cane plantation and processing there. What are your hopes for what happens to that land? There's great opportunity there. What do you hope the company does with that? I wonder if you would speak to that as somebody who is close to agriculture.
It's very heartening that they're committed to continuing agriculture. And our community has been encouraging them to really looking to continue diversified ag, but allow a more community management of the resource. And so what we've been hearing is that they're very earnestly, soliciting interest for people who want to farm. I mean, they have 30,000 acres, or 16,000, I guess, 17,000 acres that were being actively cultivated in sugar. That's a lot of acreage. And so, I think there's a great temptation and inclination to go with the monolithic crops, but we, ag, there are a lot of farmers on Maui. There's a lot of farmers who want to farm. And so we hope that A&B will work with community to realize, agriculture, something in place of sugar, more diversified. The tourist we can talk about that too, but in Hana and all along the Hana Highway, it's a big, big problem. It's such a beautiful place. We can't shut down the highway once a day. We can't limit the number of cars that come, on the highway. And, it's provoking. Tempers are flaring up. It's concerning.
Yeah, we want to give viewers some context. We're showing some photographs right now of some of the challenges on Hana Highway. There have been a lot of reports that, visitors simply, perhaps unknowing, want to get that best photograph and that selfie and what have you, and so they stop on the side of the road, take a picture, block the highway, block access for EMS or people going to work. Wendy, I know you've covered this. Tell us about some of the challenges there.
Right. For the Hana Highway in particular, for a while they were having lots of landslides, so that was an issue. If you look at the west end of the island, the Honoapi'ilani Highway, for people that make that commute daily, they experience traffic on a daily basis. They just opened the new portion of the bypass, which has helped to alleviate that a bit. But anytime there's a fire or an accident on the highway, that results in a closure of the highway for any extended period of time. You have the major artery from west to central Maui just cut off, and there's no real option for going the other way because that's such a rural route. It's not safe for people that don't know the road.
What would be some way to alleviate that? I mean, we can't, we have all these people who are coming in perhaps for the first time, so we can't necessarily educate every single one. Yeah. What do you suggest?
Well, part of it is the charm of living on Maui is that you expect those things, and some people have become a little bit complacent in it, but there's also, we need to look at ways to address that issue of the infrastructure meeting the demand.
Well, on that point, Tom from Maui is writing in, and we do encourage you to call in, tweet us, Facebook, whatever your mode of communication. Let us know what you're thinking about our discussion tonight. Tom from Maui writes, what has the state or the county done to provide affordable housing on Maui? Eric, I know that you employ more than 70 people. These folks need affordable housing, I would guess. What are some of the concerns that you hear from your employees?
At times the increases in rental, those have been here and then they've seen the rents go up, sometimes go down and stabilize, but basically it goes up. It never goes below a certain level. And the distances they might have to travel because they live in a different district than where we're the employer where we are, and vice versa. Those who travel all the way to Lahaina from Kula to work in a hotel, or Kihei, or from Haiku to Kihei, because that's where the jobs are, or Kahului, right? But the thing is, it's not easy, and there doesn't seem to be there's a shortage of rentals. There's people that are living in their cars, because they can't find a rental. And they have money to pay, but there's none available up country where maybe they would like to live. Because it's a desirable spot. Also, they have the other side where it's desirable to live close to where you're working, like in Kihei because you're working in Wailea, or in Lahaina because you work in the hotels in Lahaina. But the thing is, there aren't too many. And if you are, then you're going to be paying that increased rate for rent.
Well, to that point, there's a graphic that I wanted to show. I think it's graphic number 3, just on the increase in the number of residents. And this I found particularly striking because we tend to think of tourism growth, and you look at that visitor growth, that's the blue line there, that's the whole county of Maui. So of course that's 4 islands, but we are talking tonight about Maui specifically, just so keep in mind that this keeps everybody in there. But you look at this, the resident population is growing tremendously. So you're right, Eric, it is a very desirable place to live. Then if you look at the housing prices, and I know we got a lot of graphics, but we want to definitely give you context for this conversation tonight. If you look at the Maui housing market and the single family home prices right now, that's graphic number 10. When we look at the median sale price, $695,000, that's certainly out of reach for many people. And then we look at the condo market. So you look at there, those are the numbers that I was talking about. 96% receiving the list price. So that means that people are paying exactly what they're asking, and in some cases perhaps even more. That's for the single family homes in 2018. You look at the condo prices there, you know, $475,000 for a condo, and of course getting the list sale price 97%. So the inventory obviously is not keeping pace with the demand, and that's just for purchases. That's not obviously including all the need for rentals. What are some things that you hear in your community about the lack of housing?
You know, I read that there was a 10-year period after the recession when housing was not being built in Hawaii. And so during that 10-year gap, it sort of accounts for why there's a lag in availability of housing at any price in Hawaii. I tend to think, as someone who's not necessarily looking at studies, that Hawaii is a paradise. Hawaii is so attractive for so many reasons. The climate, the people, it's so hospitable. We're actually competing on a global market. You can price a house at $700,000 and you can advertise it globally. So our resident population is really competing with a global market. We have so many absentee owners who can afford to speculate, and you know, it places our resident population at such a great disadvantage. So I think that it's just a continuing challenge for our policymakers to really take a look at what they can do to help our residents. There's stress on the infrastructure, as you've been saying, and also great stress on our resident population. I'm very concerned.
Wendy, I'd love to hear you chime in on this.
Well, there is one of the solutions is that they're looking at landlords and opening up spaces that they would otherwise not open up to the market, to demystify the Section 8 housing and people who can't make that cutoff, to kind of open up housing for them as well. So there's going to be a landlord summit next week to address that issue, because there's a lot of people that don't make enough to buy a house, but they can rent. They have the money to rent. It's just that some landlords won't open up their spaces to people who are either HUD housing or Section 8.
Right, and that's also
qualified.
what Eric is talking about, people who perhaps have the funds but just can't find the place.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting a comment from email tonight. The trick is to figure out how to get people to only visit and vacation here, not move here. Every time someone moves here, that is one less house for a real local person to buy. You know, when we've had these discussions island by island, what strikes me is that a lot of people feel like, oh, that beach I used to go to, now there's all these people here that I'd never saw before, or that hike I used to take. I wonder, do you feel that? Do you feel like, you know, we showed that graph of that influx of new residents. How is that affecting your quality of life?
It made me analyze basically the beaches that I go to, like I can't go to anymore just because of the overcrowding, and so I've always had to adjust to that population that's always visiting the tourism population, because I like seclusion. I like to be out in the wilderness and in beautiful scenic areas and not necessarily have to see a lot of people just personally. And it's made me go farther north. If you're looking at West Maui, you know, I don't go to Kaanapali Beach anymore. I go more up north where it is harder to get to, and there are more secluded areas where I can enjoy the scenic beauty and the ocean.
Eric, I know that you were saying when we were talking before the show started that the majority of your clientele is local, and you did mention those big box stores coming in. How do you continue to maintain those relationships and keep those customers, you know, when you have the lure of, you know, low prices from the big boxes? How do you keep those relationships going?
We, you know, it's like having a relationship with your neighbor, you know. You want to be on a good side. You don't want to be on a bad side. But the thing is, you have to play ball. Of course, they have a lot of buying power. But it basically is service. You try to do stuff like that the big box store tries to do, but cannot. You know, we have certain advantages where we can change the price in the middle of the day, whereas the big box stores, you know, it has to be planned. They cannot just abruptly just change the price of carnation milk, you know, for half a day, you know, but we can. So, you know, there's things that we try to do, and basically they have us dialed in. They know all our prices. So any one day between Safeway and, sorry, I'm not supposed to mention, but those big box stores can, you know, suddenly make prices, match all our prices and go lower if they want to, you know. But we're lucky. But the thing is, we just concentrate on service to the customers, trying to remember everybody. You know, you're not going to forget Mrs. Carvalho. You're not going to forget Mrs. Nakamura, you know, much less, you know, Henry's cousin, you know, that kind of thing. You're not going to forget them. You know, they're part of the family of our area, I don't know, our island, too, you know.
And that is one of the beauties of living in a small community.
Yeah, you know, we come from a background where you didn't have to lock your door. Nobody would come into your house.
Do you still feel that way?
I still kind of feel that way, but I've heard reports, you know, from the police and stuff. You gotta watch out, you know. You have to look out.
I mean, I wonder, you know, all of you have a pretty deep history with this island. Do you feel like that kind of spirit still lives on, the idea that, I mean, not that, you know, we want to necessarily reveal whether or not you lock your doors at night when you go out, because everybody knows you're not home right now, but that you have that sense of trust and community. I mean, obviously, this is a place that you love and cherish and continue to want to live in. Do you feel like...
I do.
You do?
I absolutely do. It's special, but I don't believe it only about Maui. I believe it about Hawaii in general. I just think that the heart and soul of it is very generous and charitable, and it's hard to change, even under these stressful conditions. I think there's something that's really essentially who we are as people who love, you know, Hawaii, and I really, really believe in that spirit. And it's still there. We got to fight for it.
Wendy, do you feel the same way?
I do. I mean, year after year, Maui gets the top ranking for best island in the world, and there's got to be, you know, some give and take.
Yeah. I don't know who wants to take this one, but a caller believes that the lack of affordable housing is due to politicians catering to rich tourists and real estate for multimillionaires. What does the panel think? Are we too geared to those high investment properties? What more can we do to grow that affordable housing?
I think politicians are always looking for ways to bring money into the state. That's, you know, that's kind of like number one. And the measure of success is oftentimes, you know, how much money. That's why tourism is such a, you know, receives such priority. It's because it's such a cash cow. And I think we need to be more visionary and innovative in our thinking. I mean, I've been hearing this all my life. You know, tourists is always there, the military, government. It's kind of disgraceful that accounts for such a big percentage of our economic, you know, foundation. We gotta. I'm looking to you. Let's change that. Let's diversify. Let's have more diversified ag. I mean, you know, these are the themes we've been hearing. But politicians, you know, you get into office, I think your biggest priority is to making sure that jobs, you know, that you support the economy as it exists. You're not going to put it at risk or anything. And that favors the status quo. And it's not going to change unless we have visionary people who are really brave and, you know, and mean it.
Mm-hmm. How do we make that shift come about?
Well, it's interesting because the state actually appropriated a bunch of money this year for that very purpose, affordable housing. And I think it was upwards of $200 million for rental housing, which is something that Maui especially really needs. And hopefully, not only county politicians, but state politicians can continue to, you know, see housing as a very important issue on Maui, and to see that there is an affordable housing crisis that not only affects, you know, my generation and my brothers and sisters and my friends, but, you know, across the spectrum, everybody on Maui.
Roger from Lanai says all the islands have a problem with the high cost of housing. The caller sees this as housing genocide, which is a pretty strong term. It will kill the future for lower income local residents.
Yeah.
Wendy, what's your take?
It definitely is expensive to live on Maui, but if that's where you want to be and that's where your roots are, some people will just like it that much that they want to make it happen. I mean, that's where I came from in my situation. I knew that I didn't want to live in Los Angeles where I grew up. The pace of life is just so different, and just my love of the island, I did what I could to make it work for me. And if that meant getting another job, another part-time job, another full-time job, that's what I did. So, I mean, it takes a little bit of initiative, and it's hard to imagine that my kids will might have to have those same challenges. That's a little bit of a more difficult concept to embrace.
You know, Eric, you come from this as a multi-generational business owner, right? Your grandparents start the store, your parents, and then now you. Do you hope that your children are going to be able to follow in your footsteps? Do you think that that's a realistic prospect for them?
Funny you should mention that. We have talks, you know, with my children, and we also talk to my brother's children too about coming back to the store and continuing. And they've expressed a lot of interest, but you know, they're young, and what might sway them away? A career, a different different factors, you know, just changing their minds. I hope not. I hope somebody takes over. But the thing is, you know, it's interesting about that housing thing, the genocide term, and you know, it's hard. If you think about it, it's hard because you have those people like living on a big island, the volcano, and they were displaced. You know, some people say, well, they shouldn't have moved there in the first place. They knew they was living next to a volcano. Too bad. Well, I don't think we should say too bad to our children because there aren't jobs, there aren't opportunities, you know. We gotta do something.
Yeah.
What can we do?
I don't want us to resign ourselves to the fact that we'll always have a problem with unaffordable housing. I don't want to. And you know, we can all adjust because we love Hawaii, but it takes a toll on your families. If you're working 2 or 3 jobs, who's spending the quality time with the children? It takes a toll. So, you know, this is about quality of life, and if we have to suffer just to live in Hawaii, I mean, it's beautiful. It's just not right. And if we can do something about it, we should, you know?
Yeah.
I really think. And the other thought I had was, I know that there's been a moratorium on Section 8 subsidies. I was trying to help a family. So I don't know how often, I mean, there's apparently a very long waiting list, and the vouchers aren't given out very often. So they're even, I mean, if they're allocating funds for affordable housing, I don't know how it works, but there should be more funds available to assist with subsidizing rental housing as well.
I think back to Wendy's point too about, you know, people working 2 to 3 jobs. Like, when did that become a norm, and is it going to evolve to like 3 to 4 jobs in the near future? Like, where does it end, and how do we fix that problem where, you know, it's normal for people to be working that much and to be away from family and being away from friends? And going back to the very point of this show is quality of life, which we've all talked about. It's hard to wrap your mind around sometimes.
Well, and then some people might not make the choice that you did, right? Some people
Right.
might say, well, then in that case, I'll live in a place where the land is a little bit cheaper and I can actually afford to buy a house and spend some time with my family. And of course, none of us want that. We all want to stay here and make this community a more livable place. I mean, Wendy, what are some of the things that you're hearing about some of the solutions that people are proposing?
Well, you know, we did talk about the influx of tourism. A couple of the solutions that have already been put in place is at Haleakala at the summit, where that's one of the top places to visit if you're a visitor for sunrise viewing. They put a limit on the amount of people that can actually visit during those hours by implementing an online reservation system, so that you kind of have to plan in advance, but it helps to kind of alleviate the influx of tourism at the location and also the impact that they have on cultural and natural resources of the area. At the same time, also at Haleakala, they also put a limit on the amount of tour groups or tour buses that are allowed at the location. So they only issued permits to a limited amount of companies. So that as well is a double-edged sword, because some businesses have suffered from that. Some biking companies that use that as their main income were cut out of the picture. But it also, on the good end, the good side of the coin, there's less people that are impacting the landscape, and we can appreciate it for a longer period of time and kind of stretch the longevity of, I hope we can appreciate it for forever, you know?
Right. I mean, we did talk a lot about the impact on infrastructure, but the impact on natural resources for all of the islands, but especially, you know, Maui's not that big. And to have all of those people definitely makes an impact. And to that point, a caller calls in saying some issues facing Maui: clean ocean and healthy reefs, smart development, and better education. The public is warned to steer clear of West Maui waters repeatedly after wastewater spills. What about environmental protections on that island? How do you feel like the land is being taken care of?
We're taking good care out in East Maui.
Don't make it sound too good. We're not going to go there.
But I did want to say that, you know, when you have a discrete area like Haleakala Park or Hana or, I was thinking of that other place on Oahu. It just skipped my mind. You know, you can control the number of visitors, you can control the visiting hours, you can do those things. But in East Maui, you have an entire 30-mile, very narrow highway, very scenic, which is like a park. It's a park, and you cannot, I don't know of any way that you can control traffic. You can't put toll booths at either end. Although, I mean, I would like that. You know, if there were receptivity to limiting traffic along the Hana Highway, that would be awesome, because your photograph doesn't even begin to capture what's going on. And we have mixed traffic also. We have these big, you know, big rigs coming through. They can't negotiate turns because, you know, our visitors are parking all along the side of the road. Of course, social media has kind of exacerbated the problem, but it's really, it's fraying the nerves. It's tempers are flaring, and it's very unfortunate, because, you know, these are good people who are visiting. There are good people who are residents. Why? There should be, I heard a tourism authority official say that perhaps it's time to kind of like transition from a pure marketing strategy to a management strategy. And I really, really, if any of them are listening today, I would like to say, please, you know, let's do that. Let's think about how we manage this goose, this golden egg goose. Let's, you know.
Well, this year, you know, the projection is that we're going to reach 10 million visitors. That's statewide. I think quite a few go to Maui. So we are feeling that impact. What do you think of the idea of putting more restrictions on natural resources? I think a lot of folks, when the idea of, you know, making a reservation to see the sunrise, it took a lot of people by surprise and kind of felt like, wow, this is really where we're at, you know, that we have that many people. So I think there was some pushback, but to your point, I mean, we are trying to protect that so that generations can see that sunrise. What's your idea?
Well, one of the interesting things is, I think, not all visitors are the same visitors. I mean, you look like the past 5 to 10 years and, you know, you see more thrill seekers. And so more people are venturing into valleys that haven't been explored, or and this is all due to social media. You know, you have pictures taken, and people are braver. They're more willing to go out and do more dangerous things, and that kind of opens up a can of worms for our natural resources, and especially with emergency services too. Going into that is, you know, you see more people in danger, going on dangerous hikes, or being stranded in heavy rain, and it causes heavy stress and heavy pressure on our emergency services as well. So it's a very involved issue. It doesn't just, it takes a lot of thinking to understand the full problem of the effects of tourism on our natural resources.
Well, and to that point, Geraldine calling in saying we need to hold airlines and agencies like the HTA who profit from tourism responsible for tourist education, awareness, and safety. HTA receives tons of money. Surely they can partner with airlines to pursue this type of venture. Eric, what's your take on that? Do you feel like your island needs more protections?
I think now and in the future, you know, there's already protections being developed, like you were mentioning, yeah. This thing about suntan lotion, right? There's supposed to be a ban on certain kinds of suntan lotion. So we're starting it. We're watching the life of our coral reefs and how they're affected, and I believe in science, you know. And then there are other people that don't believe in it. You know, there are some developers that, you know, I'm not against all developers, but there are some developers that say, no, the runoff from they repositioning a stream in Lahaina did not destroy the coral reef. But then there's proof that they did. You know, the runoff did, I guess. That's what I kind of heard. But yeah, you have that kind of issues too, you know, how man is affecting the ocean. It's not just global warming, but it's man himself. You know, right. We're doing things, and then we're trying to do things to stop that. You know, to control it. Ban on suntan lotion. I don't think anybody else in any other country has ever done that. A ban on suntan lotion.
I think Maui is kind of leading the charge in a lot of that respect. We have plastic bag ban that went into effect for Maui. We have the polystyrene ban that's being discussed now, and the sunscreen for the reefs. Yeah. So Maui's kind of like, I don't know if we reached a turning point that people are starting to realize that what we do impacts the waters that surround us and the land that we live on. But I think that there's a good direction happening in that respect.
We've seen this suggested before, and for this housing issue, and I wanted to bring in the email on this. I believe this is Sochinth via email. I would like to see Maui or Hawaii in general put a moratorium on foreign buyers purchasing real estate, much like New Zealand did earlier this year. With so many foreigners buying on Maui, it is worthy of investigation. You know, we've discussed this on shows in the past. It's probably not going to happen. It's pretty unrealistic, but you know, those kinds of discussions are happening. What do you hear, and what do you feel is the impact of people perhaps not originally from here buying land on Maui?
It's interesting, and the other issue that it kind of jogged my mind was, you know, short-term rentals, and we haven't really touched on that yet, but that's really exasperated the housing market on Maui, and I think there's a lot of good solutions, and Maui's kind of at the forefront. There is technology now that's being in the works that could potentially, you know, catch all these illegal operators and, you know, help our affordable housing market by putting those units back on the market by, heavy penalties and forcing them, not necessarily forcing them, but, making it heavily suggested that, you should be renting to local families instead of using your property for vacation rental purposes.
And to that end, let's look at graphic number 5. I thought this was interesting. This is the Hawaii Tourism Authority's 2017 and 2018 projections on the tourism there. Looking at where folks are staying, 40% in a hotel, 28% in timeshare, and 10% in rent or private residence. When you have such limited housing stock, even that 10% going to VRBO, Airbnb, any of those online retailers definitely can squeeze out a lot of the rental market. Tell us about that.
Well, I wanted to revisit, you had mentioned New Zealand as establishing some laws. We maybe should look at other places and how they're responding to this type of situation. But interesting enough, New Zealand also recently established a tax on tourism. So when you're a visitor to that place now, you have a flat rate of a tax just because you came there. And maybe that could address something like the TAT that we're constantly battling with Oahu for our share of the funds, or our Maui legislators are. Flat tax the tourism that's coming directly to Maui. It's one solution. It may not be the best solution, but it's an option.
We have another email. How prepared is Maui should our economy crash, tourism dry up, and our lifelines are cut? This goes back to the idea of sustainability. We're talking about those thousands and thousands of acres that A&B now has the opportunity to redevelop in a different way. How prepared do you think Maui is for something like that?
I think there are pockets on Maui that are sustainable, sustaining communities and have great potential. And now is a wonderful time. We have the luxury of planning now. We have land available. We have a multinational corporation who has said that they're committed to agriculture, to keeping their lands in agriculture. And we have a community that's really, really anxious and eager to partner with the corporation in bringing this about. So all of Maui can be self-sustainable, I believe. Personally, I'm really grateful when I look at our table and every single item in that meal is from, we grew it. We grew it or we caught it. And it's a beautiful, beautiful feeling, and we can do this. And again, I would like to see that partnership occur. I'm sure it's not easy. It's not easy, but I would like to see that.
We're also seeing on Maui that they've made great strides in renewable energy. We see Maui now being 100% powered by renewable energy. What are the opportunities that you hope the island grows, whether it's in energy, in agriculture? What do you think, besides tourism, where can the island find more opportunity?
I'm a little biased, but I have a degree in science, so I would like to see the technology sector and science sector grow a little bit more. And I know there's opportunities in energy to do that, and also agriculture. And so I think all industries could benefit from growth and really help diversify Maui.
Eric, where do you hope the growth happens?
Geez, there's so many places. So many areas that can be grown. At one point, there was interest in bringing technology to Maui, and we have a place in Kihei, right? The technology center, the data park or somewhere. But the thing is, it kind of stopped, I think, or it's not being utilized to its full potential. We have a supercomputer down there, a big one. But then to utilize it, for profit for the county or the state, we should try and maybe go off in that direction,
Wendy, where do you think the growth is most realistic in the near future? Where do you think it can happen?
Well, they've really worked towards, the Maui Economic Development Board has been trying to implement science, technology, engineering, and math curriculum in schools, and they've really done a great job in trying to bring up that workforce. I think that's a start.
You know, the purpose of the show, as we said at the outset, is really to enliven the conversation not only for the residents of all of the islands, but also for our elected representatives and the people who hope to represent you after this next election. What would be your suggestion or the thing that you want that person to keep most in mind when they're going to represent you, whatever their respective office? Wendy, let's start with you.
Just do the best that they can to address the problems that we have. I know that there's so many other issues that haven't been brought up, like homelessness, and just do the best that they can and work towards solutions and not focusing on the problems.
I think elected officials are in a tough position because you can't really take one side over the other. The answer and the solution comes from bringing together diverse views and working things out as family. And I guess I feel like Wendy here that, you know, we would ask them to persevere. You know what the problems are. They've been around a long time. We can do this as community and as family, and it's worth it. So that would be, you know, that would be my, what I would hope for elected officials. I personally have a long background as an advocate, and we tend to be one-sided, but I really appreciate how difficult it is to put yourself in a position where you have to bring all sides together, and they have my support.
Eric, before I come to you, I have to tell you that Sean Higuchi via Facebook says Pukalani Superette is the best. Thank you, Eric, for staying local. So a little shout out there to you tonight. But, you know, how do elected officials help a business like yours? What do you hope they keep in mind when they go forward?
Well, I guess, gee, that's a hard question because the elected official has to look at both sides, like you were saying, and, you know, come to some kind of decision where he's not hurting nobody, you know. It's hard. I'd say look at the zoning. If you look at a place like Kihei itself, I saw once with a councilman, he was addressing the Kihei Community Association, I think, and he showed overlays of development. One overlay showing the present already developed properties, including the hotels, and they showed another one that's already had the permits, and another overlay behind that, going further up the mountain, of potential permits being granted and rezoning. Now, it just was pretty astounding because it just went up the mountain, and there are numbers being tossed around like 16,000 units. There's so much present, and then the growth was supposed to be like 16,000 units more, meaning houses and commercial areas going up the mountain. So again, our officials have, you know, a lot to do. I mean, a lot of work. They have to figure out, like, can you really allow this development? I'm not against any business, you know, but then the thing is, there's so many things clouding up the issues about, as far as you being a resident there, what are you facing, or what are your kids facing? Are we looking at the future? Do they allow more development of the cane lands or the pineapple fields? You know, for the sake of having housing for kids. Is there enough water? We go back to that again.
It all goes back to water, I think, in Maui particularly. We've been ending our show on this question, and we want to make sure that we give each of you enough time. So, but we want to get to all of you. Former Big Island Mayor Billy Kinoi is credited with posing an interesting question. As a resident of Hawaii, do you believe we are a state of islands or an island state? What's your take on that?
I think we're island states. Every island in Hawaii has its own flavor and its own unique style, and I think we almost operate in silos, which is a shame. And there are big issues that we're connected on, and hopefully we can continue to work together. But at this point, I would say we're an island of different states.
Eric, how do you feel about that? Are we all individual sort of fiefdoms, or are we all united?
God, I think we're all little fiefdoms. I mean, if you watch the elections on the Big Island, Kauai, and Oahu and Maui, there's so many. The elections and the concerns, sometimes they're different.
Yeah.
The dynamics of why this person is saying this on Kauai versus why they're saying this about the same issue on the Big Island. For instance, we hate to bring it up, but us people on Maui, from what I've heard, and I hear a lot of people, this thing about the monorail.
I'm going to have you leave it there so that I can ask these two ladies, because we only have about 30 seconds left. But what's your take on that? An island state or a state of islands?
I want to talk about my state of mind. I look at it as a confederacy, a nation state of islands. I've always believed that, especially traditionally, Hawaiians have great respect for place. Every place is unique, every place contributes its own character, but we are all one. So I see both. But I also, I am a lifelong advocate of sovereignty, and so I see us as a nation state of islands.
Okay. Sorry, Wendy, we are going to have to leave it there. Mahalo to all of you for joining us tonight. We want to thank, of course, our guest, Wendy Osher, News Director, Mahealani Went, taro farmer, Eric Nakashima, store co-owner, and Saumalu Mataafa, analyst from Lahaina. Next week on Insights, 4 of the approximately 3,000 residents of Lanai will be at this table representing the smallest publicly accessible inhabited island in our state. So what's it like to live on an island that is 97% privately owned? Join us for that discussion. That's next week right here on Insights. I'm Yanji Denise. Until next time, ahui ho.